Good to have you with us. Ed Schultz News and Commentary on this Monday edition. Hope you had a great holiday and a great new year and everything else. I played golf in Florida, and I want you to know I'm getting better, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Well, when you ask somebody if they had a good holiday, you got to give them some substance. So I'm taking for granted that you're asking me, Ed, did you have a good holiday? And I'm saying, yeah, I did. I hit the fairway pretty good. I got to say this. There is this club out there called the XE1 that helps you with your chipping. Okay, I took the deep dive and I bought it off the internet. And I have to tell you, it has shaved a few strokes off my game. So now whoever I play golf with, I affectionately call it the internet sensation, because anybody that can make my golf game good deserves recognition. I'm sure all of you are aware that the Russians are responsible for everything wrong in the world. And do I have a jaded opinion of this? I do, because I do work for RT America. And I can say unequivocally, not one time have I ever been told what to write about politics on my show at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, Monday through Thursday. I have been given full autonomy to write the political news, and I can tell you that I didn't slant anything towards Trump or Hillary. It was balls and strikes. So that's the intelligence report that I have. Now, as far as the hacking is concerned, I believe, calling balls and strikes, that we have to come to the conclusion that the word absolute is missing from this 25-page report, where only 6 or 7 pages of it, and if you've read it, you'll see, deal with technicalities. The word absolute is not there. And if you want to get really critical and be, I think, fair about it, I almost feel like I'm reading a weather report. Moderate, high degree of. I mean, we're pretty sure it's going to rain tomorrow, but if it doesn't, there's rain out there somewhere. I'm not sold, but the president is turning this out to be his focal point, leaving office, that it was the Russians that jammed up the election. Here he is.
Well, look, I think that what is true is that the Russians intended to meddle, and they meddled. I'll be honest with you, George, one of the things that I am concerned about is the degree to which we've seen a lot of commentary lately where there were Republicans or pundits or cable commentators who seem to have more confidence in Vladimir Putin than fellow Americans because those fellow...
That's not true, Mr. President. I have said repeatedly, somebody's lying, okay? Either the Russians are lying about their involvement in the election, or this intelligence report is totally wrong. In that soundbite, what did we get from the president? We got meddling. What does meddling mean? When are Americans going to start asking the question? I wanted to hear in that interview with George Stephanopoulos, the president of the United States, say, we absolutely know for a fact that it is traceable beyond the point of any question that the Russians involve themselves in this election to the point where we can't turn back from this. That's what I'm looking for. Is that asking too much? In the meantime, there's a story that's playing on RT America and RT International right now. You know, the Russians are getting sick of this shit. They're really getting tired of constantly being accused of something that the United States doesn't come up with. So let's move fast forward to where the Republican action is on this, where the reaction is. Lindsey Graham. And the big picture here is that the Trump administration and those on the transition team are not willing to accept this because the Democrats politically are using it to delegitimize the election of Donald Trump. As if there was some Russian effort to make sure Hillary wasn't going to be the president. And then they're purporting this story that, well, the Russians, when they found out that Trump won, they were all high-fiving and partying and everything else. Well, of course they were. Because Trump was out on the campaign trail saying it'd be nice if we could get along with the Russians. The Russians want to get along. That's the bottom line. But here's how it's playing out politically. Here comes Lindsey Graham, who hates Donald Trump.
We should all, Republicans, Democrats, condemn Russia for what they did. To my Republican friends who are gleeful, you're making a huge mistake. When WikiLeaks released information during the Bush years about the Iraq War that was embarrassing to the administration, that put our troops at risk, most Democrats condemned it, some celebrated it. Most Republicans are condemning what Russia did, and to those who are gleeful about it, you're a political hack. You're not a Republican, you're not a patriot. If this is not about us, then I'll never know what will be about us. Because when one party is compromised, all of us are compromised.
Well, once again, no absolutes. And once again, a bunch of finger pointing about who's an American, whether you accept this intelligence report or not. As he reminds the American people of missteps in the past, may I remind Lindsey Graham that he voted for the war on false intelligence. May I remind the American people that Mr. Clapper has testified in front of Senate committees and lied when he was asked about the NSA tapping into people's phones. So, look, do you want to get it on with the Russians? I guess that's where we are right now, because it appears that some Americans out there and lawmakers are bent on the industrial military complex continuing its arms sales in the arena of fear, and the best boogeyman out there is going to be the Russians. And then the political angle of it is that people are pissed off that Hillary's not president. And this is what I think Trump has got to mop up. Trump's got to mop this up. He's got to go out with another superpower and put together some type of relationship with other countries that have nukes, that other countries that are worried about their own security, and come to some dialogue. And basically what Obama is selling to the American people is an intelligence report that's not absolute. So when does this political firestorm stop? I don't think it will for a long time. Let's go to Ed Martin. He's the president of the Eagle Forum, former Missouri Republican Party chair, and a guest on RT, the News with Ed, quite often. Ed, good to have you with us.
Hey, Ed, good to be with you. Thank you very much.
I want your commentary, your thoughts on what has unfolded in the last 72 hours or since Friday as to what's gone on.
Yeah, I was listening to you, and as we were getting ready here, and I was thinking along the same lines. I think one thing maybe to put a larger gloss on this is, at the end of the day, I think Trump, and I want to say, for those people that thought somehow it was you or RT was in the tank, I was on your show frequently, and I was always paired up with somebody who was a rabid Hillary supporter and made their points, and I never thought I got more time than they did. But I do think that one thing that we have to be clear on, if you think about the forces that are opposing Trump, you go back up for a second and take a global look. I mean, Lindsey Graham on major issues, immigration, trade deals, the size and scope of the military interventions, he is opposed to Trump dramatically. The the intelligence community has generally been seen to be opposing Trump's, pullback from some of the way we think about things. I don't know what to make of this other than to say what you said at the very end. The forces that are opposed to Donald Trump changing what's happening in Washington are not limited to Meryl Streep or to a few of the Democrat louder voices. It's a lot of the power structure. I think draining the swamp, Donald Trump, I guess, has been quoted as saying he was surprised how drain the swamp became popular, that phrase. But Ed, you've seen it up close. Draining the swamp that is, the Capitol is not limited to Democrat and Republican. It's not limited to one aspect of things. It's very, very powerful. And I thought this report looked like a sort of political argument, not even a political argument, but a weak one. It didn't really, as you say, usually if you're going to slap somebody with a 2x4, you better have a 2x4, not a thing of wet spaghetti. It's a very odd thing to do.
When you drain the swamp, if you want to talk about nature, if you drain the swamp, the alligators don't die. They just go find water somewhere else.
That's well, and they get mad at first. They jump up and start, ripping into you, right? So that's some of that, too. You're right.
All right. Let's talk, if I may, get your comments, your thoughts on the FBI not having access to the DNC servers.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what kind of investigation you can run if you don't have full disclosure of information. So this means that the FBI must have done this investigation taking the word of those at the DNC and not having full access to the servers. When you get audited by the IRS, you got to give them your tax returns. I don't understand. I don't understand what authority the DNC would have to tell the FBI, guess what, boys, you're not getting our servers. I don't know.
Well,
I'm curious about that. And the other thing is, and I'll be the jaded political hack, if you may, on this, and I think this is personally a legitimate question. One could come to the conclusion that the DNC didn't want to turn over the servers because it would have exposed exactly what the DNC was doing to Bernie Sanders, and that was undermining his campaign, deep-sixing everything he said, coming up with strategy against him because they were Hillary bound. Your thoughts on Ed? Your thoughts on all that?
Well, the first point, it says not only is President Obama the President of the United States and has control over those entities, he is the head of the Democratic Party. I mean, if he really was serious about getting to the bottom of it, he'd just a couple of phone calls and say, guys, I'm the Democrat, I'm the president, let's do this. And so you're exactly right, again, which makes you realize, the disingenuousness of not only the timing, right, where somehow, I don't know whether it's supposed to undermine the president or president-elect or whatever. I concede to Sanders' point. But, Ed, I would make a different point now. I would say the kinds of irresponsibility of this action, of this report coming out and being so, ham-handed. I mean, when Trump says we demanded this hearing on this great report, and they said, well, we need to delay it so we can kind of get ready. Well, wait a second. You already were briefing, presumably, the president and his national security advisor, everybody else. So you start to say, and here's the danger. This, as you pointed out earlier, this is not messing around with, the Rotary Club of Greater St. Louis and the Rotary Club of Indianapolis, right? I mean, this is major superpowers that, mistakes between them are not only, problematic and worrisome for trade and all that, they can be cataclysmic. So exactly what they're saying they want to avoid, which is all these threats, I just think, again, think of the coverage of this, the coverage with a straight face, and then people have to retract, they call places fake news, retract. I mean, it's an extraordinary, almost like a death rattle of some of the establishment, just kind of Republican and otherwise, kind of writhing as things go down. But it's very scary, actually, and very worrying.
Let's talk about Capitol Hill. This is Mitch McConnell talking about the vetting process on the nominees that Donald Trump has put out.
Everybody will be properly vetted, as they have been in the past, and I'm hopeful that we'll get up to 6 or 7, a particular national security team in place on day one.
Okay, Jeff Sessions. How can a guy be in the Senate that long and have any issues on vetting? Rex Tillerson. There's going to be a lot of Republican support for him because of the oil industry. And Tom Price, there's going to be a lot of support for him as HHS Secretary because he wants to get rid of Obamacare. The bottom line here in all of this is that there's always resistance. Trump says today that he thinks all of his nominees are going to get through the Senate confirmation. Ed, what's your call, and what are your thoughts of the Democratic strategy?
Well, let me give you a little counterintuitive thing. I actually think that I think that the calls from the ethics guy, the Office of Ethics, is a bit disingenuous, suddenly raising these concerns. But I do think, look, I'm for more transparency. This is where sometimes the real conservatives who come out against some of the party. I think over time, if not by the time the hearings start this week, over time we're going to know everything we ever wanted to know about Rex Tillerson's, his finances. All these things are going to become clear, and I think we should, right? I think if you're going to go play big league ball at that level, you've got to be scrutinized. And as you point out, Sessions already has and all. I do think, though, that look, under Obama, the president gets to pick his team. And I do think that Trump, especially with 52-48 in the Senate, is going to get his team. The question that you ought to be thinking about is which of these cabinet directors is going to mess up first, and what's that going to look like? Because Trump doesn't seem to tolerate fools very long and very kindly. And what happens when you fire a multi-billionaire or a very popular, Ben Carson or whatever? We have some. That's the question of the next 6 months. But I think the Senate rolls right through here, and I don't think they have much appetite. The real question on the horizon to me, Ed, is what happens to the filibuster on the Supreme Court? Will the institution hold to 60? But that's probably for another day. But I think this week you're going to see the Senate move through all these nominees, and Trump is going to get his guys and gals, and then they'll see what happens when they're in office.
The potential here for a reality show is a cabinet meeting where he does fire one of those guys.
And now it looks like his son is going to be in the room too, or son-in-law. It's going to be in his room. I mean, it really run the cameras. I think you're right, and America's probably going to watch.
All right, finally, President of the Eagle Forum, Ed Martin, with us. Tell us about the Eagle Forum. What's happening?
Well, thanks, Ed, and I appreciate being on a lot. And this forum lets us talk more. Phyllis Schlafly, who is my mentor and boss, passed away in September. She was a big supporter of Trump. Over the decades, many decades, she was active in pro-life causes and all, and started many organizations, one of which is called the Eagle Forum Educational Legal Defense Fund, which is what I head up. We do education advocacy on her positions. Many people would call Phyllis Schlafly a old-fashioned, conservative, maybe a hard-right conservative. But on some issues, Ed, that we often talk about, trade, immigration, Phyllis was much more of a populist and came down on the side of the little guys. On patent law, by the way, she's another one where she always stuck with the little guy in patent law. These big companies that are scooping up patents and using the system were anathema to her. So we're based in St. Louis, Missouri. We sort of have activists across the country, and we try to get involved in all different ways to help good causes.
Ed Martin, good to have you with us. Appreciate your time, my friend. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed.
You bet. Healthcare is a big subject on Capitol Hill this day. Tonight, Chuck Schumer is going to be rallying the Senate on the Democratic side. They're going to be doing a lot of social media, trying to rally support across the country to make sure that Obamacare is not repealed, and to put fear in the hearts of Republicans not to mess with it. That has caught the attention of some, to the point where Rand Paul, senator from Kentucky, has got this plan.
As a physician, as an individual, as a patient, I'm very much opposed to Obamacare and think it's been a disaster for our country, and I will vote for repeal. I do think, though, that we should vote on replacement the same day. I'm putting together a bill. It's virtually completed. It will be full of the consensus opinions on replacement. Basically, that we need to ensure the most amount of people at the least amount of cost. It'll involve three main areas for replacement. One, that we legalize the sale of inexpensive insurance so everybody can buy it. We help people save so they can buy insurance through health savings accounts, and that we help individuals to associate with groups of individuals through health association plans so they can spread their risk and get a cheaper product.
That's called junk insurance. It's a blast from the past, and the Republicans in a for-profit system do not have a philosophy of everybody should be covered. And that's where America is. And that's where I would part with Republicans in a big way. The majority of Americans want universal health care. The majority of Americans don't want to see Obamacare gutted across the board. That's where he's got it right. But his replacement doesn't sound like anything America's ready to chew on. Ed Schultz News and Commentary, brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, and also the iSave team. We're back tomorrow. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns.
It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor.
They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up.
And the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.